will need to follow my voice as it leads you into a relaxed state of meditation.
Welcome to the Hobby Grow podcast. I'm your host, Ben Owens, hobby grower and ghostwriter for the cannabis industry. Each week, we'll dive into my network of growers, hash makers, breeders, and mentors to give you insight into their journeys as growers, plus information you can use to grow better weed and make better hash at home. Hit subscribe, roll something up, and let's get into it. This episode, we are joined by Colorado home grower and seed bank owner Rocky of Real Rocky Mountain High 719. Rocky got his start growing as a teenager on a farm, introduced to the plant early on in greenhouses. As time went on, he started collecting seeds from banks he saw in high times until 2010 when shipments started getting confiscated. Forced to grow the seeds he had, Rocky fine-tuned his selection process and was encouraged to use those selections to make seeds for himself and friends, a path that led to curating a niche menu of breeders putting out gear for hobbyists and connoisseurs. I asked Rocky to join me today to talk about his journey as a hobby grower, running a seed bank and breeding his own gear, the number one question people ask about seeds, extending the home grow beyond cannabis, and the role of the home grower in today's market. Rocky, man, how's it going?
Doing pretty well. How you doing today, Ben?
I am doing good, man. I just harvested, so the Croptober's over, and now it's the game of patience.
The busy season is done.
Yeah, well, with indoor, it's never a dull moment, and
right,
it's
never ending.
It's not seasonal like outdoor, but now I just have to wait for the dry, the cure, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully make some hash here when these colder temps are hitting us.
Awesome, man. The patience test starts now.
Yeah, I've been seeing you posting some crazy looking buds as well. Were you just chopping, or is that gearing up for a release or something?
Yeah, so I had a harvest back in September. I kind of keep things staggered. I have a couple different rooms, so but that last harvest I've been posting is mainly to promote one of the newer lines that we did a collaboration with. So I already tested that line, and I wanted to get some good pictures, some good media just to promote it basically. So it worked out pretty good.
That's awesome, man. So let's get into your journey a little bit from where you started, backing it up to like how you got introduced to growing and sort of those stages that you went through to get from there to where you are now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things where I've been growing for a lot longer than when I started growing, if that makes sense. I was helping out a buddy of mine that I met back in high school. And he basically was a paraplegic. He was, at that point, everything was illegal. He was growing for medicinal purposes. He used it for his conditions, his medical conditions. And I started working out on his farm. And he slowly started introducing me and my buddy who worked for him into the greenhouse where he was growing his plants. And so we were 14, 15-year-old kids. And it took him a while to gain the confidence and the trust, I think, before he let us start working on him.
Yeah.
And we, he was in a wheelchair, so we'd have to get up on ladders and trellising plants, staking up plants, all that type of stuff. But even at that point, it was just very minor. And that kind of got me and my buddy interested into growing in general. We'd always smoked cannabis, and for recreational purposes.
Right.
We were pretty young then. So that's kind of what got me started into it. And at that point, my parents knew that I was consuming, and my mother actually came to me and was like, you should just try growing your own plant. That way you don't got to deal with some of the people that were selling it back then.
This is when you were in like high school.
Yeah, I was like 14, 15, somewhere in that age, I would say.
How cool. Like,
and
be
so,
like, don't buy weed. You should start growing.
Yeah. She was all cool with it. And honestly, at that point, there was some rough stuff going on in the town, and like in all honesty, the people that were selling stuff to us were like some of the gang members, some of the bad people, you could say. And she wasn't real hip on that, and so she kind of took it amongst herself to be like, hey, you should try growing your own plant. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I think it was kind of in conjunction with working out on my buddy's farm, and then my mom telling me like, hey, this is cool. I'd rather have you doing this than out partying and boozing and drinking and driving and all that other stuff that high schooler kids do. So it's kind of where it started. But I never really, like, I was in high school. I never took it serious. It was fun to do. It was something to brag about. It was something to like, oh, at that point, we didn't even understand light cycles.
Right. Well, and
So,
you
I
were
mean,
growing
we
in it was
literally,
a greenhouse, right? It wasn't even relevant.
right. Yeah. We didn't understand that like the greenhouse took care of the light cycle for us. And so me and my buddy grew out a male plant for like a year, vegged it out. We didn't know anything about male or female. We popped some seeds that we got in a bag, some swag seeds. I mean, back then we only had swag. And
Yeah,
so,
bag seed.
yeah, it was just a lot of unknowns. But that's my first, I would say, like my first experience with the cannabis plant, and kind of got me into it. It wasn't till uh, a couple years after high school that I was really like, okay, at that point, all these new strains are starting to come around. We were starting to see sour diesel and Colorado cough and bubblegum and chronic and, AK-47. And I started realizing that genetics played a really big role in this whole thing. Like, I started realizing that like weed's not just weed. It's not, there's different kinds. And so that really sparked my interest. The whole genetic side of it is what really, really got me going.
And so when like you went from, helping your buddy out on his farm to like when did you start growing for yourself? That was a few years later, and like right around this time when you were starting, were these seeds that you were able to get, or this was just sort of the time of the rise of that on the forums and, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, the first stuff that I grew was from seed, from bag seed from swag. And then as we continued I worked on this farm for years and years and years, even after high school. We started
Oh,
getting a
okay.
little bit deeper into it. And so my buddy, he turned me on to, basically the back of High Times magazine, where these seed
Okay.
banks were promoting their ads. Like way back in the day, you had to order stuff off of the back of High Times. And it was really vague. And he started doing it. He started ordering these seeds called lowriders. Essentially, they were auto flowers and they stayed
Yeah.
really small dwarfs. And he ordered some of these from Amsterdam and got them in, a couple months after he ordered them. And that kind of sparked my interest. And I'm like, okay, well, let's start ordering some seeds. So at that point, this had to have been probably 2004, 2005. Um, Kind of started going ham on ordering seeds. I started putting a lot of money into getting my seed collection going. And we actually started growing out some greenhouse seed company seeds, some Sensi seeds, a lot of these breeders that were really popular, in the early 2000s. They were kind of the breeders that paved the way, I would say, for modern day cannabis.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's kind of how it all started. There's of course a lot more to it, but that's like kind of just a basic, putting it into a little corner, and kind of that's how I started.
Yeah. So you were mailing cash to Amsterdam and hoping things came back.
Absolutely. And what's crazy is that for years, I would say from 2005, 2004-ish to about 2010, we had every single order land successfully. And then in about 2010, I would say in that range, we had our first one get confiscated up at customs.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, kind of, I think like we probably got put on some type of list at that point. And from that point on, everything started getting confiscated, So, but up until like 2010, I collected an enormous amount of seeds from the Attitude Seed Bank mainly. That was the main spot I started ordering seeds from, and they had their whole system down of getting seeds into the U.S. pretty well up to 2010, and then we started seeing a huge rise of confiscation.
Okay, and that was so like what happens when you had a seed pack? Like you just got a note in the mail that said, "Hey, it's not coming."
Yeah, yeah. You get the package, right? You still get the package, and it's red taped, custom taped, and they basically would send you a coffee cup. That's what they would send the seeds in, and you still got the coffee cup, but the seeds were gone, and you get a little note saying that something you ordered isn't permitted in the United States. If you want to challenge this, feel free. Here's the information. Of course, we never challenged it.
Yeah.
We
Hey,
just
come show
okay,
up at our office and talk to us about it.
yeah, exactly. And who knows? Maybe some people really did that. We definitely didn't. We were like, okay, we just take that one as
Called
an
a
out.
loss. Yeah. Well, shit. So, how did you go from then, to to now as a bank? I mean, was there another stepping stone sort of in the way, or then when seeds started getting confiscated was sort of when you decided maybe I should like do something with all this seed?
So basically, like my seed collection, I collected, and that whole time I just continued to grow. I've always been a home grower, is what I consider myself, a hobby grower, which is why I love the name of your podcast so much.
Oh, thanks, man.
Um, I would just grow for myself, on a very small scale, and I grew through a bunch of seeds. And my transition into getting to where I am now happened back in, I would say, 2016. Um, so in that time frame, I've never really been on forums. So a lot of people are like, wow, you were never on any of the grow forums. No, I never was. I mean, I was very the internet was patchy here all the time. We live in very rural Colorado. We're behind in technology. I wasn't ever like into anything on the internet, really, you could say. So I just continued to grow and just do my thing quietly and work. I worked and I grew for myself, and I always provided myself cannabis. And
And were you
the
always in
transition,
greenhouse or were you doing indoor as well?
both. We pretty much have always had some greenhouse going and some indoors going. My indoors always been very small scale. Nothing crazy. I've never been in a commercial setting myself, like just me by myself. So very, very small. And then slowly what I was doing was I ended up getting some seeds from my wife's nephew, and I grew some of them out, and I was like, dude, these are really, really good seeds. So it just sparked my interest. And we had gone out to the Emerald Cup a couple times in 2015, 2014 to go and buy seeds.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, dude, you need to get on Instagram. Like, Instagram is the new spot for the breeders, because there was a 6-year drought there where I wasn't buying seeds.
Right.
And so he told me, get on Instagram. And I was totally against it. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that, And so I bought some more seeds from him. We ended up trading some seeds, and the ones I grew out from him again were just absolutely stellar. And I'm like, okay, hold on, this guy's onto something. I need to kind of look into this.
Yeah.
And how it all started was I was growing a bunch of in-house genetics seed packs, and like everybody, all my friends were seeing these plants and seeing the flower out of it, and they were just like awed by it. They were like, this is crazy, crazy stuff. And so what I started doing was I was purchasing, I got on Instagram, started following some of these breeders that were up and coming, started following seed banks. And so I was buying seeds from seed banks, and then I was selling them to my friends. And so that's kind of how this whole seed thing started. Um, I then
And
I
just
was
from
spending
seeds you were
thousands.
already running.
Yeah, from seeds I was already running. People were wanting to grow. They were like, I want to grow some of these plants. These are amazing. And it was pretty high, like a high number of them were in-house genetics at that point, just because I kind of found some really good plants of his, and I just continued to buy his stuff specifically and grow it. And so one day I'm out in the potato field working, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm like, man, this isn't like making any sense. I'm doing all the legwork. I'm not really making any money off this, but I'm buying all these seeds for everybody. So I reached out to in-house on a direct message and was like, here's my deal. I've been buying your seeds from a seed bank for a couple years now, and I actually think I could move some of your seeds. Like, people want to buy your seeds, and we're in a really rural area of Colorado. That kind of is its own little world down here. It's a very different area of Colorado. It's nothing like Denver, nothing like the western slope. It's very rural. It's all farmers, very small community. Everybody knows each other down here. We all help each other out. And I basically told him, like, I think I know enough people down here growing that I could move some of your seeds. And that was essentially the seed that started Rocky Mountain High 719.
Oh, okay. So that sort of also trends towards how I found you, which actually I think it was through Red first. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah, again, small mountainous Colorado is small community.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, through Red and then through Terp Fountain, and I was sort of attracted to the premise of like, you're not just buying a bunch of seed and selling a bunch of seed. Like, you seemingly are only selling seed from people you've grown their seed out. It's sort of like an internal vetting process.
Correct. That's been kind of my motto. I I won't sell anything that I wouldn't grow myself as far as breeders. Obviously, I can't grow every single strain from every breeder, but there's definitely breeders that I will grow their gear, and if I'm not willing to grow it, why would I be wanting to sell it, if that makes sense? I've never wanted to do that. I wanted to This all starts again with in-house genetics. His stuff was coming out so great that I wanted to put more of it out there to people and show people, like, this is, there's levels to this stuff, and I feel that those levels start with genetics.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's undeniable the role like good genetics play in it, right? You like growing from bag seed versus growing from purchased, very intentionally made seed, totally different.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's kind of what got me into the seed game, I guess you could say. It started really small. I think I had like 250 followers when I first started, and I would throw a post up and like, hey, I got in-house seeds for sale. It took me a good a year and a half before I even sold enough seeds to pay off the initial seeds that I bought to start it off.
Okay.
So it took a while. I had to be patient, and I didn't really have intentions, like, of it really going anywhere. My whole mindset in it was, if I could sell enough seeds, I can get free seeds for
Right.
myself. That was my intention, because I was buying so many seeds at that point. It started back ordering from overseas. Um, it's kind of one of those things. I would get on their little thing and see what they saw or what they sold, and I would buy it. And that's kind of how I started discovering which breeders, were putting out what, and which breeders to kind of disregard. And I grew any seed that I could find possible that I could buy or that I could afford at the time. And yeah, it kind of led into something that I was not expecting. I wasn't planning on this being an actual business. I was planning on it supplying my seed addiction.
That's such a cool thing, right? Like to have it pan out that way.
Yeah.
And I imagine there
Oh,
were things that you learned, like buying from Greenhouse and buying from Sensi and buying from the back pages of High Times, that transferred into how you wanted to run, your seeds. Is that fair to say?
oh, absolutely. I feel like I've ordered enough seeds from enough breeders, as well as enough seed banks, like modern day seed banks, when I first started doing this, that I kind of cherry picked some of the things I liked about certain spots. I kept track, this seed bank packages their seeds this way for transport. As an example, I received some seeds that were crushed one time, and it's because they mailed them in a bubble envelope and that was it. So at that point, I was like, okay, we don't ship that way. So I definitely cherry picked all these methods and everything off of all the seed banks that I ordered from, and even the breeders that shipped directly at that point, and kind of formed my own little way or my own little formula of running the Rocky Mountain High 719.
No, that I imagine that was pretty cool to put together and sort of curating that menu. So when as you expanded through, to other brands, were you making seeds at this time, or were you just buying seed from other people and, running through and finding the best stuff?
When I first started this, I was not making any seeds whatsoever. I wasn't breeding. I had no intention of breeding. I had this is all like, okay, I'm going to buy these seeds. I'm going to let the people that know what they're doing take care of their side, and I'll take care of my side. And what ended up happening was I met a couple people on Instagram, and one of them that I really look up to, one of the first guys that I started talking to, he sent me seeds, and I grew them and was just like blown away by them. His name was Green Snowman 420, and I think he's changed his business to Faded Maniac. But anyways, we became friends and we started just chatting a lot. We started trading a lot. We started, I sent him some of my cuts, some seeds. He sent me some of his cuts, some seeds, and I looked up to him as a breeder. He really knew what he was doing when it came to breeding, and he was the one that told me, he was like, dude, like your selections are just, they're good. You can make seeds, and I I had looked into it a little bit, just some research and stuff, but I never really thought like, I'll start making seeds. And he ended up having to go away for a little while, and he sent me his entire seed stock. And he was like, man, like you should make some really good seeds, with some of these seeds that I sent to you. And so I was like, okay. So at that point, I kind of made it a goal. And I hunted through the cherry flambe super heavily. I don't even know how many of them I popped, but I ended up finding a male that I thought was a female in veg because of the way it smelled so strong and it was so sticky. Just, rubbing the stem got you super sticky in veg. And I selected that male and made my cherry flambe line was the first seed line I made. And then I had some old seed stock from Super Sativa Club, skunk number 1. And I ended up using a male out of that and made another batch of seeds. And I made these in small little 2x4 tents.
So
And
just
so
straight
the very first,
regs, just male, female, and a 2x4.
yep, yep, just kind of not really like, okay, let's do this, see how it
The
goes.
essence of hobby
And
seed making.
yeah, exactly. Um, really didn't know what I was going to get. And so I made the seeds and I was like, okay, I made, think it was 4 or 5 crosses in there and very small plants. And I was like, okay, so I made the seeds, let's grow them now. And I ended up growing all of them, like a couple of all the strains that I made, not all the seeds. And plants that I found, I was like, whoa, like this is actually this is actually something good. I kind of surprised myself, if I'm being honest. And like in my mind, I'm like, wow, some of these plants hold up to these other seed breeders that I have purchased. In fact, some of them are better. And so at that point, I kind of knew. I was like, okay, like maybe there's something to this. And I think there is a stigma on social media at the time of a lot of the breeders were like almost discouraging, I feel, a lot of the growers to make seeds. They were like, oh, at that point, if you made seeds, you're a pollen chucker. Um, and I think it was a discouragement in some way because I feel like a lot of breeders didn't want everybody to know how actually easy it was. Seed making is not difficult. I feel that you have to have one important factor in seed making, and that's selection. And I feel that if your selection is down, your seeds are going to be good. And let's be honest about it, the plant will make seeds with no humans touching it. You know, plants
Right.
grow, and the cannabis plant can make seeds with or without humans. And so they do most of the work. I feel that selection is going to be what people need to like really focus on. And I've learned that making all the seeds I've made, I have 7 to 10 projects of seeds that I've never put out because I grew some of them and I just wasn't happy with what I found. So those just get pushed to the side, and we've never released them. So selection, when I first started this, I didn't really understand it, but selection is absolutely crucial to seed making. And 90% of the time, if you make a really good selection on both ends, you're going to have really good seeds.
That makes sense. I mean, that's the heavy lift, right? Is like finding the colors you want to paint with and finding two two pieces that make a pretty nice whole as opposed to just a stunner plant that may not do anything but produce stunner flower.
Correct. That's absolutely it. Selection is it's all about selection, and that I think that's across the board in cannabis growing.
So how
Um,
have your selections changed? Like now that you're making seed, maybe they haven't at all, but especially as this rise in hash interest has sort of taken over a lot of home grow and home conversation as far as homemaking and whatnot, home hash making. Like has your selection process changed? Are you looking for different things now, or what has seed making added to the selection process?
yeah, I think I've evolved quite a bit in seed making. I've learned. I think it depends on what kind of seeds you're making. Regular versus feminized. Regular seeds, you have to select a male. So I've learned over the years that selecting your male is just as important as selecting your female. So what I ended up doing was like growing out 50 males of one strain and seeing what they all produce, where most people won't do that. People just get rid of males. They don't want that pollen. And I learned that the structure of the male bud structure itself, how fast it dumps the pollen compared to how slow it dumps the pollen, is a good reflection of flowering time. Some males don't put off any trichomes at all, some do. Every single male I've seen that produces like a good amount of trichomes actually produces really good seeds. And I've definitely learned that. And so, moving with the times, obviously the hash game changed everything. And so me myself, I don't really look for like wash percentages or anything like that. I'm more of like a terp fan. I definitely go for the terps. Um, but again, I've always been growing very small scale for myself. So I'm not like I need a 5% washer, I've never thought in those senses, but I think I've also been blessed in the fact that I've met a lot of really good breeders, and they've all taught me along the way. And we've all traded plants and we've done collaborations. And so when you start working with some of the other guys and you start trading and you start growing some of their selections and they start growing some of your selections, it opens up your eyes and your mind to like, okay, wow, like I understand this now. I understand why the hash guys love this plant. When you grow it out and you turn it into hash, you're like, oh, okay, now I get it. So the hash game has definitely changed um, everything, I feel, in the cannabis industry as a whole. But it's definitely, there's now breeders out there that specifically breed for hash, and I've been in good relations with a lot of people, and I've been lucky in that sense that I've actually had in what, in my opinion, a couple of the bigger, best breeders that breed for hash reach out to me and want to work with me.
Yeah, I was gonna say your menu. You've like a solid amount of your selected breeders are hash guys.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's all come through with like relationships, Terp Fountain, I met him through a mutual buddy. My mutual buddy was like, hey man, I didn't know who he was. And so he's like, you got to pay attention to this guy. This guy is doing really good things, and he's breeding for hash. And so he gave me his phone number, and he was like, maybe you guys can talk. And so I ended up contacting him, and lo and behold, like I had sold him seeds already, which I didn't know.
Small world.
He had already purchased seeds from me of something else. And so we just got to talking, and yeah, it just worked out really, really well. And my menu I try to keep to where, like I said, it's people that I could stand behind, that I know are making and creating really good seeds, and as well good people in general. The cannabis game is shady, that's putting it lightly. And so I just want to work with really good people, and my goal has always been, let's put the best seeds that we can and the best genetics into people's gardens. And to see how many gardens we've actually put stuff into is absolutely mind blowing. And I would have never dreamt in a million years that we would get to the point that we got to. So it's all been a huge blessing for sure.
Yeah, and again, like how cool just came from essentially flipping packs of seeds to the buddies. And you only keep what, like 4 or 5 brands, breeders on your bank, or how does that selection process work? Are you just sort of
Yeah. So
testing
like
gear on the side?
I don't have a huge amount of breeders on my site, but I feel our motto's always been, we're not the Walmart of seed banks. If you want to go and have a menu of 80 breeders, there's plenty of other seed banks that do that. We want you to go to our menu and know that whatever you order is going to be good. And so it's changed over the years. The seed bank game has changed over the years. Breeders used to rely on seed banks heavily, because honestly, there was risk in it. When we first got started this business, we contacted a lawyer, and we wanted to make sure, because seeds were kind of in the gray area at that point.
Right.
And in some regards, they kind of still are. So we contacted a lawyer, and he told us how to do everything. A lot of people ask us, why don't you guys have bud pictures on your site? Well, number one, it can confuse the customer, and it can also confuse other people. And so we don't want to put it out like, we're selling bud on our site, because we're selling seeds. And so just little things like that kind of molded the way we operate. But I've also, we've gone through a lot of breeders, and even some of the breeders that we don't carry anymore, we still have excellent relationships with, like Bloom Seed Company, for example. We don't carry his seeds anymore because he started his own site, and he's one of my really good buddies.
Right.
And I want him to be successful. I've never wanted to step on his toes in any way. And so like we've never, there's never been any issue between us. We just kind of slowly faded out of carrying his seeds because he started his own site, which a big percentage of breeders started doing, especially, after the COVID thing,
Right.
which really just affected everything, right? And so breeders got pushed into a corner, I feel, where they like, okay, why give a seed bank 50% of our profit when we can sell our seeds ourselves?
Yeah.
But a lot of breeders don't have the time to do that. A lot of the breeders don't have the business savvy to do that. A lot of breeders don't want to do it.
Right.
So there still is a market for seed banks. It's just drastically shrunk into this really small this really small corner. And I understand completely. I've never taken anything personal for any of the breeders that started their own websites. In fact, I love it. I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody to be successful. And if you could be successful in another regard without me, by all means, do that for your business.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of relationships with a lot of breeders still, but we just don't carry them all. We are going to carry some more bloom seeds in the future, but it's just one of those things that like if it works out for us, it works out for us, and we'll figure it out as we go. But we exclusively carry the terp fountain, the fruitful seeds.
Yeah, you guys hooked you hooked me with the terp fountain. I honestly I joked. I was like, it's 2020, whatever the first drop was, and I was like, and I'm still putting cash in an envelope and sending it in the mail.
Yeah. We had so many problems with credit card processors, and it got to a point where it was just more of a pain for me to deal with it. So we kept our method very old school, you would call it, for a very long time, which we still have. We still have people that send cash in the mail to us
Hey, it
every week
works.
for orders. But we've also found other avenues of getting orders paid and stuff. And so that's been really good for us as well. And we probably, in all reality, we probably should have jumped on that a little bit sooner, but it was still, I've been to jail for the plant. So it's kind of always sketched me out, especially with the advice that our lawyer gave us starting this whole thing. And so it just took me a while to come around to like the newer ways, I guess you can say. And now we've stepped into it, and we've got that whole thing for the most part figured out. So now we do have some electronic payment options and stuff, but we still offer mail in old school style, and there's still a handful of people that prefer that way, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean it's well, and to go into your point about the benefits of working with a bank, like even if you sell direct, one of the things I like about buying from a bank, even though I often try to buy direct, is sort of what you were getting at, is if I want a pack of terp fountain, but I also want a pack of fruitful, maybe I want to throw in a pack of your seeds. I don't want to have to do 3 transactions. Like I can just cart all 3 in same source.
Convenience. Yeah, correct. It's a convenience thing. So we're still out here in the sea afloat, and I know a lot of seed banks have completely fallen off and have just gotten out of the business. And I feel like we also created our own little lane by starting our breeding. And I can honestly say without a doubt that a big portion of that has been other breeders that have taken us on board and been like, hey, let's do some projects together. If I hadn't done the first projects I did with some of these other breeders, I don't know that my name would be out there in any way when it comes to breeding. And I've always told people, like, I don't even really consider myself like a breeder. That's always been a taboo thing for me, because when I first got onto Instagram, breeders weren't somebody I really looked up to. It was kind of like there was this whole, I'm a seed breeder and everybody else is a pollen chucker. So I've kind of turned it into my own thing. I'm like, cool, call me a pollen chucker, whatever. I don't care, just as long as you grow out my seeds.
Right. And if you're finding fire, then, you know,
Yeah.
it's fun to make seed. I mean, to your point, like if like there is intentional breeding without question, but there's so much value in like when I'm hunting regs, if I end up with a male that surprises me, like I'll just throw it in the 2x2 and let it do its natural thing and get, 400 or 500 seeds.
Right. And it's fun. I mean, if you're able to, I know a lot of growers aren't able to make seeds and stuff. They're growing for profit. They're growing for whatever reason they're growing. But I've always found a lot of joy in making seeds. There's something about going through the whole process of selecting, making the seeds, shucking the seeds, waiting for them to dry, popping them, going through all of veg, going through all of flower, and then that final patience test of waiting to see what it's really all about. And then smoking something that you created. There is something that it's even hard to explain.
No, I think that you're absolutely right. So you talked a little bit about rag breeding, but so from a feminized perspective, because you've put out feminized releases too, like how is your process different with that? And yeah, I mean, I guess just like what are you working on in that regard?
Fem breeding, I feel, has gotten a bad name to it in a lot of regards. A lot of people say it's very unnatural. A lot of people say that a ton of Hermes come out of fems, and I'm not going to disagree with that. I feel that if it's done improperly, that's definitely the case. But I also feel that fem breeding is a very it's a form of art in a way, because it's so much more difficult than regular breeding. Regular breeding, those male plants always dump the pollen. They're always putting it out, and you always get seeds. Feminizing seeds is much more challenging. Not every plant wants to reverse. Not every plant wants to reverse at the same rate. Not every plant that reverses puts off pollen. Not every plant that reverses puts off viable pollen. So you have all these other aspects that go into fem breeding that, in my opinion, make it much more challenging, and which kind of makes me want to do it more, right? I'm like, okay, I've tried so many fem projects that just failed. I've reversed plants that never gave me pollen. I've reversed plants that gave me the smallest amount of pollen you could possibly think of. And as an example, I have a Skittles line that I made, feminized. That took me 2.5 years and 8 reversals to get the seed stock that I got out of it, which was still very, very limited. And when I say very limited, I'm talking less than 20 packs of every strain that I made out of it. And I just continued to work on it. I'm like, okay, this method didn't work, so let's try this.
Was
You
that
have to
the
have your
cantaloupe
timing
candy?
down. Yep, the cantaloupe candy's in that.
Okay. I have 2 of those packs. So,
Yeah. So I mean, there's not a lot of those out, and it was a challenge for me, and I kept trying. There's STS. There's all these different ways to reverse plants, and I've never been one to like bogart and be like, oh, I'm never giving out my recipe, and I've just learned what works for certain plants and what doesn't work for certain plants, because every plant's very different. So I actually have way more respect for these breeders that pull off these massive fem lines, because reversing a plant isn't just as easy as putting a male and a female together and letting them do their thing. There's a lot more that goes into feminization.
so not only the, selection, which selecting a male sounds like a definitely a learning curve, but that, you bypass that, you get to select 2 females, but now you have to figure out, how do I trick this one into performing like a male?
Correct. Like, just as an example, I know light intensity is pretty crucial for with reversing a plant. Like, you actually want less light rather than more light. The more light, it seems like they just don't want to reverse as easily. So a lot of my reversals, I reverse under T5 old school fluorescence, and they provide enough light for the plant to do its thing, and it's also gentle enough that it's not stressing it to not reverse.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you, like, as a bank, but also as just a grower in the Colorado market and somebody who talks to other markets, the like, how are you seeing these trends of home growers and commercial growers? Like, have you, I see you as someone who's catering more to like the connoisseur home grower market, but I could be completely wrong in that. Are you seeing like commercial interest in seeds, or where does the home grower sort of fall into the seed world right now?
I think the home grower is 75%, 3/4 of the seed industry. I feel that a lot of the bigger commercial grows, they purchase seeds as well, and they purchase on a bigger level, but not as often. For every one big commercial grow, there's probably 8 other small home growers. And so the home growers, I feel, are a huge market for the seed industry. They're the ones ordering the seeds. And then I've also noticed too, a lot of the bigger commercial guys they'll offer us, hey, let us grow your seeds for you, and then we'll promote it. But then they want the seeds for free. And it's because they have the name behind them, they have the facility behind them. And so the home growers are just eager. They're hungry. They're like, okay, they're watching everything on Instagram, on Discord, on all the social medias, and they're seeing all this stuff being grown, and they're like, oh, I want to grow that. And they may only have a 2x2 tent and $80 light off Amazon, but they're the ones that are buying the seeds and growing them. And that's not saying that the commercial guys aren't, because they are, but we cater to a lot of home growers for sure.
That's an interesting view of things, because I see one of the advantages of a commercial grow as, like plant count. We all like to dodge around the issue, but if you can grow an unlimited amount of plants, that makes things like hunting a lot easier, you know? And so what is the value of having somebody approach you and say, hey, I'll grow out 1,000 of your seeds and I'll pick a winner and you can have that winner in exchange for those 1,000 seeds?
The value is pretty much doesn't have a plateau at that point if it's the right person.
Right.
If you
Trusting
have
they
the
can
right
make a selection.
Yeah, if you have the right person. I've done this before with multiple people, multiple companies, where I've literally sent out packs of seeds of mine and never really hear back from them again. And
Yeah.
they're very well known big companies. And then I've also had it where I've done it and they've followed through 100% and ended up getting me the cutback of their keeper, and it was extremely valuable. So it's kind of always a gamble, but I feel like really in this whole thing that everybody's doing with, it's all about relationships. Developing relationships with people that you know and trust is invaluable. And if you work with the right people, I feel like you can score a touchdown every single time.
Making selections in real life as well.
Yeah, correct. And so I've I always tell people I think I've given out more seeds than I've ever sold. Um, and if somebody reaches out to me, with whatever's going on, and they just, I had one guy reach out to me and he's like, and I know he's been following me because he views all my stories, he comments on my stories, and he's like, man, I'm building up, I've been saving for 2 years, and I finally got my light, I'm gonna buy your seeds next month, when my taxes come in or whatever. So
That's cool.
I sent this guy a pack of seeds, a couple of them, and he ended up growing them out and did really good for his first grow, sending me pictures. He even sent me cuts. And so,
That's dope.
and this is like, a random person that I met on Instagram. And so I don't really have like a recipe for what I do. I just kind of fill people out, I guess you can say.
Yeah, no, I think that there is an immense value in that, right? Like it's the relationship with the plant, the relationship with people. Like it's we've now become connected to the entire global cannabis community, and we have more access than ever before, and being able to
Yeah.
vet those opportunities.
And something that one of my really good buddies told me years and years ago, I was selling seeds for him, his capulator. Um, and there was an issue with a pack of seeds. I can't remember what the issue was, but he ended up telling me, like, dude, they're just seeds, you know, like, tell this guy it's all good. I got him. I'll take care of him. They're just seeds, man. And that's always stuck with me since he's told me that, because at the end of the day, they're just seeds, and I know there's a flip side to that. I understand that some people save up for 2 months out of their paycheck to buy a pack of seeds, and then something doesn't go right and now they're out whatever that pack costs, but anytime we've had any type of issue, we do our best to take care of everybody. And what really sucks, and it's hard for us to figure out, is that there's also a lot of scammers out there. And so, but doing this as long as I've done it, I think I have like a really good radar for what's going on. We've heard some pretty bogus stuff and we've heard some really genuine stuff as well. And so we just I've used that to people. Like I've had people reach out to me like, oh, I bought this pack of seeds from this breeder and 2 of them didn't pop and blah blah blah, and I'm like, dude, chill, they're just seeds, like it's okay, we have plenty of seeds here.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point, right? Like germination rate and guarantee. Like I remember seeing that way more often. 5 years ago was like 100% germination guaranteed or 99% germination guaranteed, and I don't. I guess it's never been something that I've bought based on, and I've definitely had packs. I won't name the breeder, but I popped 2 12 packs and had one germinate out of 24 seeds. Like that's a pretty shitty
Right.
ratio. But
Yep.
I'm also not going into any pop hoping, expecting, 100% of these are going to be viable, vigorous plants.
Right. There's so many variables when it comes to germination. Germination was one of the big things that our lawyer was big on at that point. When we first started the seed bank, he told us, don't even touch germination. He said, that's where you guys can get yourself in trouble. And so we did that for a long time. And we kind of like just pushed everybody back to the breeders. We were like, okay, if you have problems with this pack, you need to talk to the breeder. Cause at that, we're kind of the middleman at that point. And so what I've learned to do, it's kind of why like I will make seeds for freebies with that intention. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna make these seeds for freebies and I'll grow them out and make sure that they're good. And if they're good, we'll hand these out as freebies. And so, it's hard to always guarantee anything when you're dealing with seeds because there's, maybe the person doesn't know how to germinate seeds. Maybe their room's too cold. Maybe they kept things too moist, which is probably the most common reason why seeds won't pop. I get asked weekly, what's your method of germinating seeds? And I tell everybody, I do it the way my grandma taught me how to grow tomatoes. I wet the soil a little bit, make a little tiny hole, not very deep, toss the seed in there, cover it up, let it go.
So
I
just
don't do
direct
any
sow
special.
right into it.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know that seeds actually have an up and a down. Cannabis seeds specifically, there's a pointy side and there's a caldera side. So like volcanoes have the caldera. If you look at a seed, there's a caldera side and the pointy side. I always go pointy side down or on its side, but I never go caldera side down. And the reason for that is because I've had seeds germinate upside down where the taproot was actually coming out of the soil and it was growing downward. And so just there's so much to germination that I feel that if you put a guarantee on seeds, it has to be some type of scam in a way because there's no way you can guarantee it if you're dealing with other people trying to grow them.
Or you
That's
have to
just the
say, if you do
breeders.
this exact process, this is exactly how I would get results.
Right. And so yeah, germination is one of those tricky things. It's an art, right? It's something that the more you do, the better you get at it. And a lot of these hobby growers, they don't pop a lot of seeds, so they do struggle. I think germination is probably the number one question people have for me when it comes to growing, honestly.
Really? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've killed it's heartbreaking like to kill half of a pack because you fucked up and again, like it was too cold and you let it sit there for a week and now the seeds are just dead.
Yeah, that could be devastating to people. And so
Yeah,
we
especially if you're
don't take
spending
that
10, 20,
lightly.
50 bucks a seed.
Yeah, we don't take that lightly. So what we do is, we try to help them out. At this point, we're like, okay, well, what did you do? And here's what you could do next time. And that's a tough thing because especially when you're, not now so much, but like 2018, 2022, when the seed business was like in its prime, is what I would say. I mean, we were doing up to 80 orders a day. And so when you have all these people coming to you asking you, what's the lineage, it was hard to keep up with just in general. And germination has always been, still to this day, probably the number one question we have from people. And people ask me all the time, what's your method? And that's, I tell them, don't overcomplicate it. If you want to, you can, but this seed does not operate any differently than a tomato seed. The seed doesn't operate any differently than most seeds. And I think the more people overcomplicate it and think about it, probably the more uh, they mess up.
So, what size like you're sowing into soil, like 2-inch pots or like what how are you starting those? Like is it solo cup or what is your initial
So
container?
it really depends on what I'm popping at the time because I always have so many different things going on. Like if I'm going to do a big seed hunt, I will use I think it's like 48 seed starter trays.
Okay.
And I use Pro Mix. Um, I go straight with the Pro Mix. I moisten very lightly. You don't want it to where it's dripping. And then I make my hole and I go in very, not deep, not probably an eighth of an inch to a quarter of an inch, but no deeper than that. And then I cover lightly and then I use a spray bottle and I mist the top to where it looks like it's starting to saturate in. But again, I feel like if that's the number one thing people mess up popping seeds is overwatering initially. Keeping those seeds too wet is going to
Just
just rot them
drowning
out
them.
so quick. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I did want to talk a little bit about some of the other home growing you've got going on. We've talked about our shared interest in tequila, and you're growing some agave.
Yes.
What else has home grow led? I guess, backing it up, like agave, but has home growing cannabis led to an interest in gardening or an interest in growing other species of plants for you?
Oh, absolutely. Growing cannabis has definitely led me into growing other things for sure. Like you said, agave. I've never been throughout my whole life really considered like what I would consider a big drinker. And my wife enjoys tequila. And so she would want to do some shots here and there, and I would do them with her, but it wasn't a big fan of them. And we started getting different brands for that reason, because I'm just like, there has to be, I kind of in my mind I'm like, okay, this is like strains, right? There
Right.
has to be another brand that's better than this one.
Right. Someone who's
And
growing
so
craft.
yeah, so we started looking into other brands, and that opened up our minds pretty big into like, okay, um brands do differ, and there's a lot of different techniques in it. And so like the agave spirit and the tequila world really caught my attention, because there's so many parallels in it to cannabis growing. And also the patience that these agave growers have. It takes 7 years minimum of growing an agave before you're actually doing any of the work to make the spirit.
Wow. I
And
didn't
to
know
me,
that.
that was mind blowing. And so I started really researching it, and there's so much that goes into it. The terroir is what they call it, which is essentially where it's being grown. The soil that it's being grown in affects the flavor, it affects everything. And then you
Weather,
have the
altitude, all of it.
altitude affects it. And then you have the way it's being processed. Is it being crushed with a tahona? Is it being crushed, with a roller mill? Like the way they crush the agave plants to make these spirits, all there's 20 different things that are going to affect the final product when it comes to agave spirits. And so that sparked my interest. I'm like, okay, I need to really look into this. And I probably looked into it way too much. And I started learning about all these different companies and how they do things. And of course, almost like with the seed thing, I'm like, okay, now I got to try that one, and I got to try this one. And it doesn't help following these guys on Instagram either, because
All the latest
the
drops.
yes, the agave spirit market is so parallel to the every single week there's a new drop from a new company. And this time, instead of using spring water, they used rainwater. And this time, instead of crushing, there's
Instead
a
of
hundred
bourbon
different
barrels, we
ways to
used
do it.
wine barrels.
Yes, correct. And so they're constantly reinventing what they're doing to continue the hype of all these new drops. And I slowly learned that there's actually these brands out there, just like cannabis breeders, that are doing things very correctly, and they're putting out high quality spirits. They're putting out very, very good juice. And you don't know that until you start diving into it and you start trying all these other ones. But yeah, the cannabis growing definitely got me into the agave 100%.
So you are growing agave and you're planning then, like, I didn't realize that this was a 7-year project you had started. I thought this was like a seasonal thing and that like by now you'd have your first batch of agave.
Yeah, it's a very long process. So I've become friends with a couple pretty big names in the tequila industry, some of the distillers. And I wouldn't even say friends, I would just say acquaintances at this point, but we've talked business, you could say. And surprisingly, there's actually a huge market for in what they call them infusions. So it's tequila or mezcal that they infuse with cannabis.
Oh, I
And
forgot we were
so
talking about this. Yes.
one of them one of them reached out to me, and I met him through my buddy who's very, very deep into the tequila game, and just was like, hey, your pictures look cool, we should do something together. And then they sent me some samples of what they do and what they make. And I was just like, yeah, I'm on board. Let's do it. So I actually purchased some agave plants from a very well known big name distillery.
So like cuts
Um,
or like seeds?
Cuts. They were actually little small plants. They call them man, I can't remember. They're basically little
Little
clones. They
succulent
actually
type
call them
things.
clones. Yeah, so like an aloe vera plant puts off little shoots. That's what
Yeah.
agaves do as well.
Okay.
And so they're shoots. So they cut off the shoots and replant them and stuff. So I ended up buying a few of these high dollar, very expensive little agave plants, and because of where they're coming from. And so yeah, we're growing some now, and I've given a couple out to a couple of my buddies in the cannabis industry who I know are really good growers, and so they're growing some of them out too. And yeah, we're gonna see what we end up doing with them. And at this point, it is a 7-year project, so we're not 100% sure what we're gonna do, but we have 6 more years to figure it out.
No, that's cool. And you got buddies to experiment with. It's like giving the same cut to your buddies, and one grows it outdoor, one's indoor, one's greenhouse, one's for hash, all the different ways you can
Yeah,
get there.
and it's really cool too because the other people I got the agave plants to have completely different growing methods than I. They use a different soil, they use different nutrients, they're in a different climate, like all these things matter. So it's going to be really cool, come 6 years down the road to see what their agaves produce compared to my agaves coming from the same exact source.
Yeah, that's so cool. And it's things that like before I grew pot, I wouldn't have even known that there was like a market for agave cuttings, and like, and I mean, it's
Yeah,
like when I went to my wife likes to garden, and we go to the garden store, and she's like, "Oh, that's a really expensive cutting for a citrus tree." And I looked at it, it was like $100. Like, it's like less than a pack of seeds. Like, just throw it in the cart,
let's
like,
go.
but relatively it's insanely expensive for a cut of a citrus tree, I guess, versus
Right.
like for cannabis, like you got a cut for $100. It's probably a pretty decent, but easily accessible cut.
No, yeah. I think that it's kind of shocking to see. I've even had people tell me like, what do you sell a pack of seeds for? And when I tell them, they're like, "What? Like how many seeds do you get?" And of course, these are people that aren't in the grow scene whatsoever. So to them, to pay $100 for a pack of 10 seeds is outrageous. They're like, "Man, you're crazy." But they're not in it. They don't understand the potential that comes out of that $100 pack of seeds. Essentially, it could be your $1 million baby right there.
Right. Yeah. You find a unicorn. What's the most expensive pack of seeds you've bought?
Ooh, I've bought multiple packs of seeds for $2,000 a pack. This isn't from a breeder. This is from auction sites.
Okay.
There used to be an auction site on Instagram called Seedzer's Palace.
Okay.
THC's ran it, and I was a huge customer of his, man, because he had all the hype seed packs at that point, and he was very well connected in it, and he had all the seed packs that everybody wanted. And so like some of his auctions went into the $2,000 range. And funny enough, I actually met one of my best friends on an auction, us bidding against each other for a pack of seeds.
That's cool.
And what ended up happening was we ended up contacting each other, and he's like, "You're not going to stop bidding, are you?" And I was like, "Nope." And he was like, "Man,
Run
I
it up.
want that pack of seeds." Yeah, he's like, "I want that pack of seeds." And so I told him, I was like, "Well, hey, I knew he was in Colorado." And so I was like, "How about this? Let's stop bidding. Let's you win the pack of seeds. I'll send you half of the money. The seeds can be sent to you, but don't open them. I'll drive up to where you're at, and let's split the pack of seeds because I really want to grow these seeds too."
Yeah.
And I actually met one of my best friends that way. That's how we ended up meeting, becoming really good buddies. He's helped me with 99% of my shows that I do. And kind of crazy, kind of a crazy story of how we met.
Yeah, that's cool. So, as some like the most expensive pack I've bought to date, I think is $500, maybe $600. And like that was like I had to really justify, and I think it was from you actually, now that I think about it. but it was the FPOZ,
Yes,
F2. But like,
500.
yeah. So like, what to you is like, what justifies that $2,000 tag versus $500 or, something in between?
So for me, like buying those $2,000 packs, it was the rarity of them. Like the knowing that nobody else really had those packs made them super rare. And also the fact knowing that I'm not just going to buy these packs and sit on them. I'm going to buy these packs and pop them. And then now, you know, um, like the number, I think one of them that I bought was Fatso when Fatso was really, really big. And I knew like the only other person I knew that was running Fatso was Red from Altitude Seeds.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to buy this pack of seeds and I know I'm going to find something really good in it. And like just off of what I find, it's going to make me way more than $2,000. And it did, of course. So it's always a chess game when it comes to buying seeds and cuts and things. And cuts get crazier. I
Yeah, 'cause
think
it's a
I've paid
fast
20.
forward.
What's that?
You're fast forwarding through the hard part. Somebody's like, hey, this is the winner.
Right. And so when you're buying cuts, you're paying for somebody's work, like most of the time. Again, you got to be careful. There's so many companies now out there. The cannabis game is like a huge target for scammers. So they see people making all this money off of cuts. So they're like, oh, okay, well, we'll start a business where we sell clones. But if you go to a reliable source, I have paid $10,000 for a cut and we drove cross country to go pick up the cut.
It's insane. But
Um,
yeah, I mean,
but with that being said, that's how bad I wanted that cut. And I ended up making seeds with that cut. And I ended up making more than $10,000 off of those seeds with that cut. So the cut paid itself off. And now I have that cut forever as long as I want.
yeah, no, I mean, it's an investment. Like you said, if you have a way to figure out the return, it doesn't have to be monetary, but like if you see $10,000 of value in something, then that's all that matters if you're going to see the return, however you quantify it.
Absolutely. So everybody puts value on things very differently. And so I've been very selective. There's a lot of packs of seeds, the $500 packs that have come out from a lot of other breeders that I've just been like, there's no way I would pay that. And then there's been other ones where I'm like, cool, I'll pay that, no problem. So I think it just depends on what you're trying to do. And everybody has different likes and desires and stuff. So
Well, and it's
a lot of
I got a pack of aficionado seeds when I was in Oklahoma. One of the breeders had, or one of the banks had it in their vault and was, private collect like you have on the site. And they had that, or you could buy a cut that they had hunted, and it was like 300 for the pack or 1,800 for the cut. But again, to your point, like, do you want to go through the effort of hunting and culling and selecting and doing all that, or do you just want to save all that light and electricity and nutrients and time and just get the cut?
correct. And there's people, I know people that only buy cuts, and I know people that won't buy cuts at all. So there's pros and cons to all of it. Popping, I always say popping your own seeds. That's the way I tell people to go, because you're gonna find something essentially that nobody else has. um you other people may have something similar, but if you pop a pack of seeds and find your unicorn plant and you never give it out to anybody, you literally have a plant that nobody else has in the entire world.
Right. Yeah. But flip side of that coin is if you end up with problems in your grow, you have no backups.
Yeah, you could also pop that pack of seeds and not find any keepers.
Yeah,
So
that
you
or
may
or
you
all
may have been
males.
better off buying the cup. Yeah, so there's a flip side to everything. There's pros and cons to everything. Also with clones, the big thing I've noticed with the clone game is that all these clones, like especially washing clones, that's the number. Like people are like, do you have clones that wash? Like people don't even care what they are, they just want something that washes.
Right.
So when people approach me and with if somebody approaches me with saying, do you have any washers, at that point I already kind of know what they're aiming for, what they're going for. And then you have the flip side of that, of you have people that ask me, what's the quality of the hash, what's the terp of the hash, before they ever ask me what the percentage is. And so to me, those people that are asking what the quality of the hash is or what the terp is of the hash, I think those people are growing more on for like the connoisseur level, to where the people asking me what the wash percentage is, those are the people growing commercially. Those are the guys that just want to pump out hash left and right. They don't care what the strain is, they don't care what the profile is, and that's fine. All love to them. Let them do their thing. I prefer more on the connoisseur side. What's this hash? What's the profile of it? What's the quality of the hash? Like, some plants put off really chalky, dry hash no matter how you wash them. And some plants put off really wet, high quality hash no matter how you wash them. But, again, it's all preference.
Yeah, well, and I also would say that you've done a pretty good job selecting breeders that, like I could recommend Terp Fountain or Fruitful Seeds probably with full confidence to anyone and be like, look, if you pop this pack, you'll find a washer. Like, if you pop half this pack, you'll probably find a washer. You don't have to
Right.
buy the cut. Like, if you're buying the right seed.
Yeah, no, correct. And so, yeah, we definitely make sure that we're very picky. We're very picky on who we work with in all regards. When it comes to the seed bank, who we carry, but also who we work with. And a lot of these projects that we do with people, I've done collaboration with Turf Fountain. I've done the collaborations with Bloom. Me and Fruitful have some stuff brewing up right now. So it's just being picky and being selective. Again, we're not trying to be the Walmart of seed banks and genetics, where we consider ourselves more, you know higher end, more picky, more selective, for sure.
More niche.
Yes,
So,
correct.
are you
And
personally growing for hash then as well as flower, or where does your balance fall in that?
so yeah, I grow for both. I grow for hash and I grow for flower. I smoke a lot more flower than I do hash. And I kind of consider myself a baby when it comes to hash smoking. I see these guys taking half-gram dabs and stuff. I don't do that. Maybe when I was 20, when we were smoking the BHO and
Shatter,
stuff, but not
slab
anymore.
dabs.
Yeah, we don't. But I do smoke hash, obviously, and I make hash. So, the hash game, we I've been making hash so long. We used to make it out on the farm. My buddy would bring women's pantyhose, and we would dump the buds, and we'd have cold water buckets, and we'd spin it in pantyhose before there was ever bubble bags, and
Wow.
we would end up with bubble hash. And so we've been making hash for a really long time. But I've been turned on by some of my friends into like modern day hash, the rosin and stuff like that. And so, again, I've been super lucky to meet some of the people I've met and to have the relationships that I have with some of these people. I sponsored the Hashish In podcast for a couple years and got to go to all these events and meet a lot of these big name hash makers and good hash makers and stuff. And we ventured out of Colorado into Oklahoma with one of my buddies to start a hash company out there. And so the hash game was kind of modern day hash game is kind of new to me in some regards, but I've been lucky that I have a circle of friends that, in my opinion, are probably considered some of the bigger hash makers in the game. I work very closely with Turp Fallon, with Bloom, with freaking Bread and Butter, and whoever else you want to say that are some of these really, really highly respected hash makers.
Yeah, no, and interestingly, like it's Rocky Mountain High, as the brand, but I think that people in Colorado often forget and or take advantage of the fact that we live in such a concentrated area for breeding and growing and hash making. Like you said, a lot of the top hash genetics companies that gets their names get tossed around have roots somewhere in Colorado.
Yes, it's very deep here. I've told a lot of people it's very easy to find really good hash here. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people here making great hash. People that I've never heard of. I'm not. I don't follow or watch a lot of people. I kind of stick in my own little world of my friends and the people that I know. I have people all the time coming up to me saying, "Oh, do you know who insert hash maker?" And I'm just like, no. And I think I even told you I'm really good with faces because I've met a lot of people at these shows, and a lot of people have put hash in my hands to sample. I'm really good with faces. I'm really bad with names. And so I just kind of stay blind to a lot of it. And so I kind of let my friends guide me. If one of my specific friends tells me like, hey, you need to look for this guy, I'm probably going to start looking at him. And that's how I even found Terp Fountain. Was one of my good buddies who I trust. And he's Ginger Larf. Ginger Larf is the person that introduced me to Terp Fountain.
That's crazy. That's cool.
And so if I have somebody that I know and trust, and I trust their judgment, tell me, hey, you need to look into this person or you need to meet that, then I'm probably going to go for it. But otherwise, I stay I have blinders on, and I keep focused on what I'm doing and what we're trying to do ourselves. Because I feel that if you just watch everybody, you're constantly going to like be influenced to, it could be a good thing because it can keep you doing good things, but it could also be a bad thing because then you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody. You're constantly like, okay, this guy's running these newts and look at the pictures he's posted. Let's change our nutrient regimen to that. And then you're never able, I want to dial in what I'm doing and focus on that and kind of, if something else comes towards me, that's great. And I'm all for it, but I don't really go searching for anything new per se.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's, like you said, there's value in learning from others, but there's also an immense value in once you've kind of picked a path, staying in that lane and seeing how it pans out.
Yeah, correct, man. And like even with you, you're one that I've met in person, talked with multiple times, somebody that's always been very good to me, very somebody I look up to, and so I've been invited to do a ton of podcasts, and I've only done a handful ever. It's podcasts aren't really my thing, if I'm
I
being honest about it. It's not something that I usually participate in or even listen to for that matter. But because you came to me and asked me, I'm all about it
Well, I
because
appreciate that, man.
it's because of you.
Well,
And that's
thanks.
kind of how I operate everything. Like, if the right person comes to me with the right proposition, then it can lead to something really good.
Yeah, well, I first of all, I appreciate that. And it's been cool figuring out this role of podcaster, right? Like curating conversations that other people will find value in. We could sit and talk probably for hours about growing, and I don't know how much of it would be relevant to anyone else but us. But I think that you're somebody who's done your part as far as servicing the home grower community without question and the home hash maker community. And, I respect what you're building, and I'm glad that we could get you on the show and have a good conversation. And, as on your note of comparison and sort of getting into our rapid fires, like, I feel like, we're all chasing that goal of being better than our previous self. And so what, like, let's recap a little bit, like that first grow setup compared to like your current grow setup. Like, what do those look like?
Night and day. My first setup was an old high pressure sodium, like probably I would consider dangerous now, in a small little closet with one plant in Miracle Grow, literally. Compared to now, it's completely night and day. My new grow that we've built out is, I put so much time and thought into it. And it's because I've been into hundreds of grows. I've been to I kind of did the same thing building my business that I did building my new grow room. I'm like, okay, I remember what this guy did in here. So I kind of took the best that I could of everybody's grow rooms that I saw, but also trying to like cater it towards me more, because I know my method of growing. I know the way I water isn't the same as everybody else's. I've never wanted a drip system. I've never wanted automated. I'm the type of grower that I want to fill my pots every single day, and I want to see, are they thirsty? And if they are, how thirsty are they? Can they go, till the next day, or just that type of thing. So it's a complete, I mean, literally, it's a 180 compared from when I first started to now. I would have never envisioned or dreamed that I would be to where I've gotten, but it's taken so many years and so much hard work to get here. But now that I'm here, I look back and it's almost comical in some regard to how bad it was and even how dangerous it was. We were running everything off of extension cords, and like I said, a high pressure sodium that was very dangerous. And like, dude, it was hot in there. We were, I don't know how hot it was because we didn't have a thermometer in there, um, but yeah, it was very just trying to get into it. And at that point, that's what we could do, and that's what we knew to do, so we did it. But it was the seed that got me to where I am now.
Yeah. So now you're in Pro Mix, hand watering. Are you amending your soil? Or are you feeding bottles, or what's your nutrient plan?
So I've changed up so many nutrients over the years. It's kind of crazy. Like I said, I literally started in Miracle Grow. Most people probably wouldn't admit that.
Right.
I'm glad to admit that because I've grown from that. But now my most current, which is only 3 cycles, I was growing Mills Organics for 5 years, which from my knowledge, you can't even really get in the United States. I established this really good relationship with Mills Nutrients at a show. They had a booth next to us, and they came over and they sampled some of my flour, and they were like, "Whoa, this is really, really good flour." And then I started telling them what I did and who I worked with, and they were like, "Hey, we'll give you free nutrients if you shout us out on your social media." And at
Keep
that
throwing
time, I
fire
think
like
I
this with
had
our products.
yeah, and I think at that time, I think I had like 55,000 followers on my Instagram account. Something it was quite a bit of followers compared to what I have now, but I've lost so many pages over the years. And so, long story short, I grew with Mills Organic for 5 years, and I recently switched over. And this is going to surprise, I surprised so many people that I've told. I am growing with General Hydroponics, very simple system. That's what I'm using. It's what I'm
Do you add
dialing
microbes
in.
or anything like an additive to it, or just the base system and let nature do the thing?
Just the base system. Haven't added any microbes to anything. I keep it super simple. I've always been one that says the nutrient companies give you their recommended amounts, which in my opinion are always a little too high. And they do that because they want to sell more product. The more you use, the more they're going to sell. And so I've kind of figured out my own regimen. So I'm not going exactly off of what they recommend. And that took me a year to kind of figure out. And then, on all honesty, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
My last run, the stuff I've been posting on social media, I feel I could do better. And I feel it's going to get better because it's a brand new room, and I'm only 1.5 years on this nutrient regimen that I'm still trying to figure out. But the reason why I changed was because some of my people that I know that I look up to, like I've gotten flour from them, and their flour was so good. And I was like, dude, what are you using? Like, and they
Right.
they told me. So that's what caused me to switch over. And so I always tell people, like, you have to find what works for you. Um, and I didn't know if this was going to work for me in the beginning, but so far it's been pretty good. I feel like in the past half a year, I've grown the best weed I've ever grown in my life. And that's even with a new room that I'm still learning, that I'm still trying to dial in, with a new nutrient system that I'm trying to dial in. But I attribute that to my focus. I'm very, very focused. I'm very concentrated on what I'm doing in the grow. I didn't have any fumbles these last 2 cycles. And in some regards, I feel like the seed game that I got into and turned into such a big business took away from me actually growing. I wasn't putting the time in the grow that I once was when I was full blown seed business. I mean, we couldn't. We were just so busy.
Right.
We were doing, 10, 12 shows a year across the country. So we were traveling, we were filling orders, we were breeding, making hash. We were making hash for other people. We had so much going on that I wasn't focused on the growth. So I was still growing okay, but I wasn't growing to my potential. And so the biggest compliment to me just recently was one of my buddies telling me, dude, this is the best weed you've ever brought me. And this is some of the best weed I've ever smoked.
Yeah.
And to have somebody tell you that, I feel is just, it's the biggest compliment somebody can give you.
Yeah, and I can absolutely speak to that too. You know, when I was making seeds in one tent and growing for a class in another and recording content on, in a different tent and trying to flower in alternating cycles, and the more irons you have in the fire, the grow definitely suffers.
Absolutely. And so I think focusing on what you're doing is going to be crucial to anybody. And I don't dog on anybody for growing how they grow. Like if you grow in whatever media you grow in, I know plenty of people that grow in like soil, Happy Frog. I know people that only use the build a soil soils. I know people that make their own soil. I know people that do straight cocoa. What I've always done is I've judged something off of how good it is. I have friends that have brought me flour and hash that grow in pure cocoa that, in my opinion, blows away anybody in soil. I've had people in soil bring me hash that have blown everybody away in cocoa. So I don't feel that you're going to have one method that's better than the other. I feel that it's all preference and what works for you and how you want to grow. And so if people want to grow a certain way, I say go for it. Find out what works the best for you as a grower and what you like. Don't look at what somebody else likes, and figure out what you like and what you want to grow. And if you're growing something and you're happy with the product at the very end, then you've succeeded. And if you can figure out a way to get better each grow, then you're winning. And that's what it's all about to me. I don't think winning's about the amount of money you make or creating the best strain or even growing the best weed. Like there's always going to be somebody out there that has better weed than you. Probably you just may not know him. It may be some dude named Tim in a garage in the middle of Michigan that doesn't have social media.
Yeah,
The
often.
best weed I've ever smoked, in my opinion, came from a 70 some year old man that definitely doesn't have social media, and he did not use any nutrients whatsoever. And just his weed came out so clean and so like everything tasted so good. He just didn't get the yields that most people would get if you're adding nutrients and amending and microbes and everything else. But I would rather smoke his weed than some of the other weeds I've seen that were no-till and microbes and pumping nutrients and whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I mean, it's a very valid point, right? Um, so are you in your current grow, the new room you built out, is that also the breeding room, or do you have a separate breeding space that you make seeds in?
Very separate.
Okay.
So we have multiple locations for breeding. So prior to 2023, I actually relied on one of my friends who lived 6 miles away from me, and we made all the seeds out at his spot. And so we worked out a nice little deal. He just wanted to smoke weed for free, and we worked out a nice little deal, and we made a ton of seeds there. I now currently have my own spot to make seeds in. That's not my spot where I grow flour and for hash. And then I have another buddy who lives out of state who has helped me incredibly. And he doesn't even like want to be mentioned. It's to that point. He's like,
Yeah.
dude, I just have fun doing it. He's one of my best friends, if not my best friend. And so he's in another state and he has multiple tents set up. So we literally drive clones to him and he helps us. I make selections. He helps me with some of the seed making while I'm making seeds here. When you're starting to make seeds, you can't have cross pollination whatsoever. So you can't make one strain in one room in your house and make another strain in another room in your house. That's not going to, I mean, you'll make seeds, but you're going to have some cross pollination. The pollen is so small and it travels so much. It's just not responsible as a seed breeder to be doing that type of stuff. So I make seeds here. I have a spot where I make seeds and I focus in on my projects. Mainly now I've made a lot of fem projects, and then some of the regular projects I've made, he's helped me out with. And like a lot of people, this is how a lot of breeders operate. I don't know if a lot of people know that. Like very rare is one guy making every single seed that he releases himself. But again, I've made all the selections. It's literally me taking plants to my buddy and then he waters them.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
it's like designing the project and then telling people how to build
yeah.
it.
And so I even, I give him crap about it. Like some of the something got reposted the other day on Instagram, and I'm like, dude, you made that, and he's like, no, I didn't, you made that. And we just laugh about it because he's the type of person that he doesn't want any of it. He's just like, dude, I'm the dude in the background, is what he says.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and there's a humility factor there for sure. I think the plant definitely brings that out in all of us. I mean, even you, dude, like to your point, like not wanting to be on podcast, not really wanting to be, let the plant stand for itself, like not wanting to be the guy on the podium talking about it.
Yeah, and that's just something that comes, I think, more because I've been growing for so long. I mean, we come from a time where I would rather have somebody take my product from me and they can tell people they grew it. I don't need the credit for growing it at that point. You know what I mean? That's not what I was trying to do. And so that's kind of our mindset with all of it. I've made seeds for other people, for other breeders that have been released and been super successful. And then one of my other buddies has made some of my seeds. And so it's just kind of one of those things. You can't do it with everybody, obviously. You have to have a lot of trust in a person. And that, again, this all goes back to relationships. And I tell people Rocky Mountain High 719 isn't me. It's a group of people. It's a group of people and family members, even like my family helps with a lot of it. I'm not the one always doing everything. My family helps me trim. My family helps me wash. My wife is the huge part of it. She's helped with so much of it. My best friend is a big part of it. My friends are part of it. Like everybody that has helped me in so many regards is part of Rocky Mountain High 719. I'm just the dude they call Rocky. And Rocky Mountain High has a lot of branches of people. And in reality, most of them don't care to be known for it in any way, shape, or form, and that's just how it is. And that's how it operates. And most of these successful companies are like that.
Yeah, and I mean, at a certain point, you have to form a team. Like to your point, there's only so much one person can do, especially if you're also running a business and you're also doing, 6 million other things.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot at times, but I wouldn't want to be doing I'm so blessed in the fact that I'm doing what I love. I never wake up saying, "Oh, I'm dreading, what I'm going to have to do today." And even the days that we know we're going to be washing for 12 hours, and we wash everything by hand. Like, we don't everything's by hand. We do everything very old school style. And so people who come to us and know that, they're like, man, you're crazy. Like, why are you doing this all by hand? They have like ospreys and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I know
Yeah.
that.
But that's also, I mean, it's a topic we didn't really touch on, but I mean, that's a significant investment for most home anything growers or makers
Right.
to buy an osprey or a mini osprey for that matter, and $5,000+ purchase for part of the process, not even the whole process, and you have to have a grower that supports it, right? Like I have 2 4x4s, like there's not enough material if I combined those to probably do one run in an osprey.
Yeah, correct. Not everything is aimed towards the home growers anymore, it seems like. And the home growers are the ones that keep this whole train rolling. If I'm being honest with it, I personally don't know a whole lot of people that go to buy commercial weed. Most of the people I know are getting weed from people I know home growing.
Right.
There's that's just the home grower keeps this train alive 100%.
Yeah. And, it's like you said, it's what kept it alive pre legalization and what's keeping those of us that go down the rabbit hole, keeping us excited for what's to come. Okay. So this or that, man, wet or dry trimming?
Dry.
Dry trim. Okay. Do you defan at all or just leave everything and whole plant hang?
Whole plant hang. We take off the water leaf, the fan leaf first, and then throw it into another pile. Anything that doesn't have any trichomes on it gets taken off after it's dried, gets put into a pile, and then that pile gets manicured up. And then from there, it gets put into another pile and it gets taken off the stem. And then from there, the curing process starts.
Okay. Salts or organics?
Me personally, I've never successfully had anything done. I've tried organics. I've tried the no-tills. I was never able to pull off a clean enough smoke that I liked myself personally.
Yeah.
I always felt that like I would never get the clean burn. I would never get, the terps were there for sure, but the way it smoked never came out properly. And so salts I've done because you can flush. I feel if your flush is right, I've never had anybody who only grows organic come to me and smoke my weed and be like, "Oh, that was awful," because it
Super
was
salty.
salt. So, yeah.
Seeds or clones?
Depends on your circumstance. Again, I'm gonna say seeds though if I'm going just off me.
Okay. If you had to pick, you'd go seeds.
Yep.
Flour or hash?
Flour,
Okay. Melt or rosin?
rosin.
Okay. What about, this will be interesting because I know you're a little bit biased, but what are either some genetics you're running or, 2 or 3 breeders that you would recommend for a home grower who's maybe branching out from some more entry level gear?
Obviously, I'm gonna, I would say myself for sure. But go past that, I would say in-house genetics, Bloom Seed Company, Terp Fountain Genetics, Fruitful Seed Company, Altitude Seed Company, Swamp Boys. I know that's more than a few, but those are the guys that I would recommend pretty highly. I think if you grow any of their gear, you're gonna have some success.
Okay. No, that makes sense. What about, have you any epic cuts you've lost that you wish you could bring back, or epic crosses you'd make if you had access to any cuts?
Yeah, I have a cut that I grew for a really long time called Bay Dream. It wasn't it wasn't a hype cut. People didn't know about it. I found it out of freebies from the Attitude Seed Bank actually. And of all things, people love this when I tell them it was Bay Dream crossed to Bay 11 from Granddaddy Purple Genetics that Ken made. And it had all the good qualities of the Blue Dream, like how it grew, how it yielded, but it carried that Bay 11 terp, and it was my baby for the longest time, and I did breed with it luckily, and I ended up finding so many other good cuts, and I was getting handed all these really really good cuts. So finally I was like, okay, let's move on from it. And I regret it to this day still because I feel like there's just a lot out there that didn't compare to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. But also, there's only so many cuts you can keep.
Correct.
What's keeping you excited about cannabis these days?
Honestly, what's keeping me excited is um the potential to continue to create really good cannabis. Um, I get, I've gotten approached by a lot of people to do a lot of projects. I like working with people. I like doing my own thing too, and it's really cool, to work my own project. But I feel that if you can create something with other people as well, I think that's something special. And so some of the projects that I've made recently or that I'm in the works of making with some of these guys really excite me because it's a lot of terp profiles that you just aren't out there, that you're not really seeing, and quality as well. There's a lot of good quality stuff out there that you're not seeing. And like now, I like flower, and I feel like flower is the hardest thing to find these days. A good high quality flower is damn near impossible to find unless you know the right people. And good hash is everywhere, and I think some of the really good hash makers take offense to that because they're like, that's not true, like what, but really, like, there is really good hash a lot there. Colorado is very flooded with really good hash, and it's very dry with really good flower.
Yeah, no,
So
I agree.
I want to bring the good flower game back, man. Everybody's so concentrated on hash these days, and that's cool. I like it. I like good hash just as much as anybody else. But like, I still want the good flower. And in the process, everybody started making hash, and I think so much of the good flower is lost to that. And so obviously, I think if you're growing, there's more money in hash. You can make more money in hash than flower, and that's driven the market towards hash. And I'm excited for the flower game now, because I've had a lot of hash people come to me and be like, "Wow, like you're making me want to smoke flower again."
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to double down on your point, I would say that it's easier to make good hash, decent hash, not award winning, best in the world hash, but it's easier to make hash that's smokable and enjoyable and of acceptable quality than it probably is to master the dry and cure for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most people don't have a dedicated space for drying and curing. So it's tough, especially here in
Especially
Colorado.
hobbyists.
We're so dry. We're
Yeah, I
so
mean,
dry here. But yeah,
I'm drying in my tents that I grew in. It's the life of a hobbyist.
absolutely. And that, like I said, most people just don't have a dedicated dry cure space, and that does matter.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing everything I can to like really, and it's not that there's not any good flour out there, because there is, but it's harder to find nowadays, because so much of it, all the really good flour is going to really good hash.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking to somebody else about this recently about how like there used to be, if you spent enough time on the internet, however you got it, YouTube or forums or whatever it was, there you could be leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of people in the hash making world. But I would say post COVID, in the last 5 years, the amount of access to hash knowledge has drastically increased.
Oh yeah, there's classes, there's forums, there's so many things. There's, like I said, I sponsored the Hashish Inn, and they put on classes of how to do everything. And so like everybody's after the art of hash right now, it seems like. And I think that flower gets very pushed to the side. And yeah.
What's your take on? So I'm curious then, before we sort of wrap up here, what, like I've heard from a few people in my network that there's a prediction that, connoisseurs will always be on the flower tip and maybe returning to it more so as the hash market gets more flooded. But the next generation of consumers, the non-growers, the people who weren't introduced to cigarettes, they were introduced to disposable vapes as, what a nicotine device looks like. Is that generation going to end up majority of hash smokers or concentrate smokers, or do you think flower will remain kind of that dominant?
Um, I think I personally think flower is always going to be around and be dominant in as a whole, like in that sense. But I think the vape market is huge right now, and it for me, even I could even say like I use them out of convenience.
Yeah.
um I've made hash, and I've made vapes, and I've done it all. And I still, to this day, I have found some pretty good vapes, but I still haven't found a vape that translates the flavor like you do a normal dab. um no matter, at the end of the day, it's still a cart, and there's always still that cardiness to it. And of course, all these companies have been dialing in all their technology to get rid of that and to try to do it, but I still haven't found it. And so I think that the vapes are always going to be there from this point forward, because they're out there. You can't close that box up. But for me, and what I've noticed, it's out of convenience. The people that do get them, they're like, oh man, they're just so convenient.
Right.
And let's be real with it. Like, dispensaries sell these $10 carts now, but it's all distillate and it's artificial terps. And so when somebody comes to me and they get a really good rosin cart, it changes. They're like, whoa, like, this is very different than the $12 cart I just got. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's because you're actually smoking real weed.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have had similar interactions with, a lot of family members and friends from back home. Um, if you were going to leave the growers that are listening with some advice, whether it's for doing things at home or experimenting or just for hobby growing in general, what advice would you leave them with?
I would tell them to, number one, have fun with it. Don't If it's starting to stress you out and it's starting to become a thorn in your side, it's it that that's not what you want to be doing. And I see it a lot in the cannabis industry. I see people, just losing their mind over it for whatever reason. So number one, have fun with it. This started as a hobby for me, and hobbies are supposed to be fun. And so also the other thing I would say is to do your own thing, whatever that may be. Don't get caught up on what everybody's doing on social media. Don't be caught up on what your friend down the street's doing. Do your own thing and grow, number one, for yourself. That's been my motto this whole time. I started growing for myself. I started making seeds for myself, and I continue to do that. I've had people come to me and tell me like, oh, you used this plant in 3 different seed lines. Well, it's because I like that plant and I'm making seeds for myself, number one. If other people want to buy my seeds, that's icing on the cake. But I have never made a strain with the intentions of like, okay, people are gonna go crazy over this. We've always been pretty intentional with what we do, and like I've always tried to put in the best plants that I could put in to make seeds. So I think if you focus on what you're doing instead of focusing what anybody else is doing, I think that's a huge piece of advice I would give to people is just do your own thing and have fun with it, because this is supposed to be a good thing. It's not supposed to cause you stress. It's not supposed to put you into heartache and to hard times. And unbelievably, I've seen a lot of people that treat weed like a hardcore drug. I'm like, whoa, like, like, dude, you're going pretty far with this, man. Like, this is not what this is about. And so, that's the advice I would give to people.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, man. If people want to find you and they're interested in what you're doing, staying in touch with your projects, or maybe even supporting you and buying some seeds, where can they link up with you? Where can they find you online?
I'm very active on Instagram. My pages get shut down continuously. My current Instagram is at real Rocky Mountain High .719. And then I have another account that's Rocky Mountain High 719. It's like my backup account right now. Our website is where we handle all of our business. That's if you want to like see what we're doing, follow our Instagram or our Discord, which is really new to me. My buddy turned me on to it, and I'm still learning it. I feel like I'm so old on there. But anyways, my website is RockyMountainHigh719.org, and we are also in Canada. And major shout out to my Canadian partner. We didn't really mention Canada in any of this, but we also have a Canadian seed bank. It's the Rocky Mountain High 719 Canadian branch, and I have a buddy up there that runs it and operates it, and he is me in Canada. He has full power to handle everything in Canada. We have a really, really good relationship and have never had a single hiccup in 7 years of business together. And we're talking about international money being transferred, moved, seeds. Like, it's pretty bizarre that we haven't had a single hiccup. And I think that's just a tribute to who he is as a person. And so, yeah, we're in Canada as well. RMCA.ca is the Canadian website. And also, you can Google us. And like, if you just Google Rocky Mountain High 719, our website will come up. So that's how you can find us.
No, I think that's awesome, man. I will definitely be sending people your way. I already do, Thanks so much. Thanks for making the time. I know we went a lot over, but I've enjoyed this conversation, and we'll continue it, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, Ben, and it's been a pleasure doing all this. And I couldn't thank you enough for having me as a guest. I appreciate it, man.
That's it for now. New episodes drop weekly to help you grow better weed and make better hash at home. Hit subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend. As always, I'm your host, Ben Owens, and we'll see you next time.